Okay, hi Trev.
Hi Tom, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Considering?
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Um, and as I said to you, it's great just to get local people on and sort of tap into their experience of the game and seeing sort of what gems some people can take away on their journey towards whatever football career they want to pursue. And actually, you were someone I really wanted to get on, just because you've done a range of roles, which obviously we'll get onto in a minute. And you're a seasoned podcast pro now with your with your Trevor Tat.
I'm
Make sure we
glad you
get
got the
the
name
right
right
order.
anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's a good start.
yeah. Just tick the note off there. So just to start with, do you want to just tell us about sort of your past in the game and where you're at now, etc. Just sort of that journey.
Yeah, it's been a long one. So really, I can remember back to when I first started playing youth football. It's actually for Stowe Falcons in Stowe Upland. A good friend of mine, Steve McGavin, was asked to go over there, and they asked if he had any friends who he'd also like to take over there. So him and I went over there, had a great time. First time we played sort of proper organised football, and I think there was some under 10s. And it's kind of turned into a bit of a, we ended up winning all the leagues, the cups, and I was there for 3 years. And interesting enough, even at that age, I then wanted to challenge myself because with us winning everything, I thought, actually, I want to do things a little bit differently now. I want to maybe go somewhere where they haven't been winning, and can I make them a better side? And I actually then joined C&G Bury, which later formed into sort of St Edmunds Youth, and then to sort of Bury Youth a few years down the line, and had a great time there. And actually, most of the players that I played with are still very, very good friends now, all those years ago. So which is kind of nice. Played for Colchester United from 16 to 18 in the South East Counties League. Had a great time there. Really, really enjoyed it. Playing against the likes of Tottenham and Southampton and Bristol Rovers and Arsenal and what have you. It was just a great experience. Left Colchester probably my second year, and then had a spell at Ipswich, which was for me, being a lifelong Ipswich Town fan was a great thing. And I was on there for a trial for a period of time. Unfortunately, after reserve team game, I was told by Bobby Ferguson, who was the manager at the time, that he felt I wasn't quite good enough to make the grade, which kind of knocked me for six. And I should imagine it probably took me a good 2 to 3 years to really get my head around that, and I sort of struggled with it after that. But then, so as well as being at Colchester, and I wasn't playing every Saturday there, I also started to play for Bury Town Reserves. I played there first time when I was 15. I then played for the first team when I was 16. But at Bury, it was tough because in that first team, there was some really, really good players. Obviously, the likes of Simon Milton were there as midfield, but it was a good competitive side. And I can just remember back, Tom, to be honest, when I was a youngster, I was always playing football. Always, every given opportunity, even if none of my friends were available, I'd make sure I'd get a ball somewhere and I'd go and play. Or I used to get a tennis ball in front of a brick wall and just practice with my left foot, which was my weakest one. And I just absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved the game and couldn't get enough of it. And I kind of then broke into Bury Town's first team. I had spells at other clubs, but Bury was sort of kind of always my club. Although I did have a successful spell at Histon for about 3 years later in my career as well. But so yeah, that's kind of where it all started, really. Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah, so quite a few clubs then, really. So obviously got exposure to a mixture of kind of levels as well, which was obviously must stand you in good stead as you go on. Is there any kind of things you look back on and sort of lessons you're really glad that you learned as a player from any of those clubs?
Yeah, there are actually. I certainly remember when I went to Colchester to realise I was in not necessarily what Colchester had to offer, because Colchester, in the whole scheme of things, against other clubs, were, you know, they were a very, very small club. But when we then went to play Tottenham or went to play Arsenal or those clubs, and you turned up and their training facilities were fantastic and their kits were immaculate, and you know, they just look stronger than anybody else and just look quicker than anybody else. To be on the pitch in that environment just blew my mind a little bit, and sort of said to me, you know, I'd love to have a bit of this. You know, this is what I'd want. So those kind of experiences were good. The flip side of that, I also do think that it really helped me in sort of round about the same time I was still training with Bury, and to be training with the first team with such a good senior squad of players. You know, as I mentioned there, Simon Milton, but we also had players that older listeners may recognise people like Doug Evans, who played for Norwich City and Cambridge United. You know, Phil Boylan. You had players who played like league games. You know, good proper league games at pro clubs, and I was training with them, and training was like a game. You know, it was full blood. It was, and that kind of told me that if you want to progress in the game, you've got to kind of treat training like you have, you know, a normal game really to succeed. So that was a wake up call, yeah, and that was a good learning curve for me.
It's interesting, isn't it? Especially because I've had many people say it before, just about that intensity in training. And especially when there's that level of professionalism where you're fighting for a shirt or obviously fighting for a contract, whatever it might be. It's just really interesting to really hear someone having experienced it and say actually how much that intensity is so important in training. Because I mean, we've all been there. We've all done training, and sometimes we go, "Oh, you know, it's raining. I can't be bothered with this." Like I say, it clearly does separate, you know, those that do go on, etc. And a man, as coaches now, we must do it. We must watch and go, "Oh, yeah, you can't be bothered."
Yeah. It is, and it does separate the players as well. It separates the levels, because you've only got to look at, you know, nowadays we can watch documentaries about most football clubs. I watched the Tottenham Hotspur one a number of months ago, which I actually found very, very good. I kind of switched my opinion on Mourinho a little bit from, you know,
Agreed.
He came across as a sort of a caring person, whether that was because the cameras are there or whatever, but he came across as a caring person, so especially one-to-one. But to watch their sessions, you know, because they are winners. Hence the reason why they play at the level that they do, and that's what separates them from others. And if they're winners, they don't even want to lose on the training ground. So it pushes you, and it kind of separates the winners from the losers, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you say, with the winners demanding that high intensity and high standards. I was talking of Jose Mourinho, watching the Marine game the other day, and I think it was the first goal was quite sloppy, really. You know, he's actually missed it, and then obviously ended up just taking an extra 3 touches and tapping it in. And Mourinho's almost like shaking his head, just going, "Oh, you know," because again, actually, he's probably already highlighted the fact that it was rubbish, and they've got away with it. And it's just, again, that high standard. He's not celebrating. It really spoke volumes to me, just that actually how high his expectations and standards are.
Yeah. I agree. And I actually think that he was, reading between the lines, I think he was a little bit disappointed in the lad's reaction or his celebration, because I think he thought he was probably being a bit disrespectful. When you've scored on the line against Marine, you've smashed it in, and you've celebrated like that in front of nobody. I think that might have told Mourinho a little bit about him at that time, actually, but we'll soon see anyway.
Yeah, again, it's just something else just to consider, isn't it? Sometimes when you're trying to impress your manager.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a coach now, is there any when you look back on your playing career, is there any memories that you have of coaches doing stuff with you or saying something, or the way they've dealt with a situation that kind of lingers with you, and you try and use that in your coaching now?
Do you know what? the first two youth sides that I played for, mentioned earlier on, were Stowe Falcons, where we had one of the parents of the dad, but he was a good, solid guy called Graham Cole. And then when I went to C&G Bury, a guy called Trevor Gardner, who'd played hundreds of games for Bury Town, really good, rock hard centre half. He kind of started to show me that man management wasn't always about the technical side, that he knew how to get the best out of me, even at a young age. And he kind of gave me a little bit of trust on the pitch, which that's probably the first memory I have of sort of coaching, if you like, or man management. And then when I went to Ipswich, and the penny started to drop, Brian Klug, who was only just then starting at Ipswich, I think he was helping a guy called Peter Trevivian now, who was running the youth side. And he used to help with the youth games. And Brian Klug was, I think most people know now, he's been at Ipswich for a long, long time. Great coach. And I think he was the first team manager for a short period of time. He went to Spurs to run their academies. Very, very well thought of in the country. And Brian would just sit next to me. He was a central midfielder. His career finished early when I think he broke his leg at Sudbury. And he just, in fact, no, sorry, actually he broke his leg playing for Ipswich Youth when he was very, very young. But he used to just come and sit next to me in the change rooms, and he would just drop little snippets of information to me at half time and then after the game. And when it first happened, I wasn't too sure, because I was so used to people standing up in front of a group of people shouting and hollering or whatever. And here was a guy who just used to come and sit next to you, and he would just say the odd thing here and there, and then he would just get up and leave. And then the penny dropped probably, after a couple of games. I thought, I think this guy rates me. I think he's trying to help me here because he's just giving me little nuggets of information. And I've never forgotten that. And so whenever I have been involved in coaching or managing, I've always tried to do that. And I'm doing it in particular now with Walsh because we've got so many youngsters. Because, we've all got to realise that talking for somebody for 15 minutes, you lose them. Their attention span will go after a number of seconds. So I've tried to carry that on as to what I was taught there by Brian. And I thought it was, for me, it was just, it gave me a lift because I thought, well, here's a guy that I knew about anyway. And he just took time out to come and sit next to me and just help me. And that gave me such a lift.
Yeah, just that exposure to that, just a bit of individual feedback is massive, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
As a player, and both, to be fair, as a coach, manager, when you give it and then you actually see it, come into the game, such great response. I think, annoyingly and sadly, sometimes coaches forget about it. Because there's so much to do. I think at the same time, also, some players miss it.
Yeah.
Really actually miss the opportunity sometimes. Perhaps they actually miss sometimes it's subtle or whatever. And he's just really trying to just almost as a player sitting in that change room and just take everything you can out of, what the managers are saying. And I always remember being in a changing room and I was having a stinker, absolute stinker. And the manager just said something, nothing at me. He was just talking, just sort of like drifted out. And someone else in the changing room, one of the players, just said something. And I was like, that is absolutely bang on. Like, and just because I hadn't zoned out totally, and I just picked up on one little thing, ended up, really improving in the second half.
Yeah.
It's just really trying to take it and just soak up as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And like I say, that was just a light bulb moment for me in that game. And it does happen like that.
Yeah, and I think as well, as you go through your career and you come across lots of different characters, and they always say about taking little bits and pieces from the managers and coaches and trying to mold. That should help you mold into the person you are. I kind of get that to a certain extent because I think as an individual you have to be a certain type of person to want to be able to coach, to want to be able to manage. I think you've got to care, especially nowadays. I think a lot of people miss that trick. I think that's a little bit old school. They think that the result is everything. No, it's not. Absolutely not, because it depends what you're trying to achieve, who you're trying to achieve it with, what's the long-term gain, that type of thing. And I always remember at Bury Town, Martin Spohr was the manager. How they never won anything, I don't know, but they got to the FA Cup. I think it was first round, lost to Enfield after replay. Had a great run in the leagues for a number of years, some great players. And I always remember his attention to detail. And I remember when I first got in the squad, I was sitting on the bench, and he wouldn't always say an awful lot during the game. But then in the change rooms after the game, he would just remember something that happened in the 46th minute. And there he is after the game talking about the specific thing. I remember sitting there thinking, oh, that's impressive. He hasn't written anything down. How has he remembered it? As I got to know Martin, I still actually know him now, but as I got to know him, that was basically down to the fact that he was a very, very intelligent guy. And his job in life was all about statistics and about remembering things. And so he used that strength to come to the role. But I do think you need to, I think you need to kind of be yourself if you can. I think the shouting and hollering is old school now. As I said just a moment ago, it's not all about results. We've been hitting a message home to our players this season. Basically, what everyone's gone through in the world, there isn't a written rule, but I am a firm believer in. I believe you're there. Football is a game of entertainment. I know that you need to go away from home and you need to roll your sleeves up. You need to grind out a 1-0 or a 1-1. Yes, totally get that. Totally understand. But players should feel as if they can turn up. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to go out there and entertain. Yes, they're going to be disciplined. Yes, they're going to play within a structure. Because they're playing in particular at that level, they're playing at that level for a reason. And that is, unfortunately, they're just not good enough to play at the higher levels. So it's important that they enjoy the environment. It's hugely important.
Absolutely. So important just to have that enjoyment, because everything is made so much easier if you do have it. And yeah, we all differ. Some people will get, frustrated a lot quicker than others. That's just natural. But you still have to enjoy the game. You have to enjoy what you do. I spoke to Luke Chadwick not so long ago, and obviously Luke played at Man United with Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Beckham, etc. And during his career, he carried on playing wherever he went to, and he's still playing. And because he absolutely loves the game.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter to him where it ended up. He just had to keep playing. And I mean, absolutely brilliant wherever he went. And even now, seeing him coach, it's just that passion and love for the game. And it's so important. It really, really does, like I say, it enable you to do so much with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what a lot of people forget, Tom, is that, why did they start playing football in the first place? They played it because you say they absolutely loved it. That was their passion. And so why is it then that when they come towards the end of the career, they can't keep playing, for that sole reason? We were fortunate at Bury Town when I signed Gav Johnson. Gav Johnson was absolutely epitomised that scenario in regard to his professional career had ended, but he was playing because he was still passionate about the game. He absolutely loved turning up on a Saturday afternoon or be at training, and it'd be probably the best player in training, and he'd be the best player on the Saturday afternoon. I've played against some professionals in the past who have been an absolute embarrassment in their attitude, and they try to give this persona on the pitch and tell you that, well, I've done this, and we had a game for Bury years ago, and I was on the management side, and we played a side called Horsham down on the south coast, and that a guy, no one knew who he was, but he was hell bent on telling everybody that he played for Middlesbrough, and said during the game he's telling players, make sure you Google my name, and how embarrassing is that? No one knew who he was anyway. And he's had to tell everybody that he was a pro. and he was probably one of the worst players on the pitch. And it's, some people just kind of forget what it's all about, really. But the best ones are those, as you say. Luke Chadwick's a great example. I know that when he played for Soham, and I think was it St Ives or St Neots, I think, towards the end as well.
Yeah.
And, I listen to people and say, what an attitude, absolutely brilliant. And how good is it for the youngsters as well? Look up to them.
That's it. I think it really does. Again, the young players, again, at Bury, like as you mentioned with Devon Johnson coming in, the exposure those young players got from here to him would really have brought them on, and again, just sparked that love for the game in the change room, and that he definitely would have been one of the reasons for the success that Bury Town side had at that during that spell. You know, such an influence, and it's really important to, again, just as a player, really take note, almost, isn't it? And
it is.
Let yourself get into it.
Yeah,
really important. Obviously, we crossed paths at Bury Town. That's how we obviously met initially. And Bury Town at the time were obviously, this was actually during Gavin Johnson's playing time, I think. And during that time, really successful at bringing young players through. How important is it as a young player, or just a player in general, in choosing a club?
Huge. I think it's probably one of the most important things. To add to what we said earlier on about, in making it enjoyable for the youngsters, it's so important that I think that youngsters pick the environment that is going to enable them to flourish, enable them to enjoy it. Because if they enjoy it, then they're going to want to go training. They're going to want to put the effort in. They're going to want to learn. They're going to want to listen. They're going to ask questions of the coaches and the fellow players. So it's important that they go to an environment that suits everything and is going to develop them. They're going to and improve them. They're going to enjoy it. And I always say to players, whenever I've spoken to players and they've asked me questions, whether it's advice on, I've got 2 clubs coming in for me, which one do you think I should go to? Or I've been manager of a club and I've had people say to me, oh, so-and-so's come in for me, and I always say this: when you're retired and you look back on your career and someone says to you, where did you enjoy your football most? You will not turn around and say, I enjoyed it there because I got £20 a week more than I did at the other place. You will always say, I enjoyed it most there because that's where I probably improved more than anything else. That's where I probably hit the heights more than anything else. We were competitive, good feel about the place, good bunch of lads, wanted to go training. Not the £20. The £20 comes and goes. That goes at the drop of a hat, especially nowadays. But I think it's just so important for players to pick the right environment. And I think that can also be the deciding factor between a lot of players who have been trying to get into the pro game and they just go to a club that allows them to flourish, and then all of a sudden they get their move, even if it's late in their career. And we, talk about Bury, let's talk about Connor Hall. Got his first professional contract at Harrogate Town at, I think, 27, 28, because he'd been doing really well at the previous clubs he'd been at. So it is important. It's so important, more important than money, because if all the money went, and there'll be a number of clubs who will be struggling whenever, football gets underway again, all the money goes, then players are going to have to make those decisions as to where is it right for me? Where's the best coach? Where's the best environment? Where am I going to enjoy it more? And you know what? Actually, it might just give football a kick up the arse and just might do it a huge favour.
Absolutely. Like I say, it's so important that the whole club, and especially young players wanting to progress. I mean, it's a lonely road if you're trying to push yourself out there with no backing.
Yeah.
But, when you find the right club, and obviously we're using Bury Town as an example now, when Nick Pope and Connor Hall were in the system, Bury Town wanted them to have the best possible career they could have. They were behind every player. They were behind him in that way. So Connor Hall and Nick Pope, got pushed on by that club. So it wasn't they didn't have to go out there, and they of course had to put themselves on the pitch. But again, the club gave them that foundation. to kick on. And obviously, as you said, perhaps it was a little bit later in their careers that they've ended up getting those moves. But look how it's look how it is going at the minute.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting actually, the Nick Pope story. I mean, people are probably fed up of hearing it, but it was at the time it was a real interesting one because he'd been on the bench for the first team. He's obviously a very, very young lad. Marcus Gunham was in front of him. Marcus wasn't an awful lot older than him as such. He was, I think Marcus might have been, I think he's only about 4 years older than, so Marcus was way off his peak. But Marcus has been playing so well that, it was difficult to kind of dislodge him from Popey's point of view. But then when Popey played a couple of games, because Marcus had started to drop his levels just a touch, and I remember the first game I saw him was Billericay away, which was a mud heap of the pitch, big physical side, intimidating crowd behind his goal. And I stood there watching it that day, and I thought, yeah, nothing fazed him. Nothing fazed him at all. He was a teenager. He was coming for crosses. They had a guy at the top of the slope throwing these big direct throw-ins down his throat. They probably looked at the team sheet and thought they got a kid in goal. Nothing fazed him whatsoever. And at the time, looking back, had he not gone to Charlton, do you know what? I don't know where it would have ended, because we potentially could have ended up having Marcus Garnham having to leave Bury because Nick Pope would have pushed him and maybe taken his place. So we could have potentially have lost someone who had probably been one of the best goalkeepers in the previous 20 years at the club out the door at the age of 21, 22, because Nick Pope was right behind him. So it was a great scenario for us. But Nick made it because a lot of it is luck. It's a lot of it is people willing to put your name forward. And I know that the person who actually did put his name forward was Steve McGavin. Steve McGavin knew the goalkeeping coach at Charlton. He got him to come and have a look at him when we played Sutton away. And from that point on, then once Richard Wilkins found out that there was interest, Wilkes wanted to give him the best opportunity and to encourage him to move on. So it was brilliant. But once Popey was in that environment, he was at home. Everyone. I then started to hear the stories coming back on a regular basis about people saying, "Wow, this kid's going places. He's going to play at the highest level." And whilst we all had hopes for him, and we were all impressed with his ability and his attitude, we probably didn't realise that he would be playing or go as high as he has done, and in particular in the international stage. But I keep saying it. England's number one in my mind. Might be a bit biased.
I'd agree.
But if he played in the World Cup, he played in the Euros, he would not show any more nerves than he may have done at Billericay on that cold, wet Saturday afternoon. And that is why I think he's got a long, successful career ahead of him.
Absolutely. Again, you sort of touched on it just there with Wilkes, Richard Wilkins. Just as soon as obviously he got a sniff of what was going to potentially happen for Nick, just giving him that extra bit. Again, this is invaluable as a player. Just having that backing from a coach, from the club, it's absolutely pivotal for people that really do want to kick on.
Yeah.
Like I said, obviously we've seen those two players kick on.
Yeah.
So obviously you're now manager at Walsham. Step 5, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you look for now as a manager in players that are trying to break into your team?
Honesty. I look for honesty from them. And by that, what I mean is, are they the kind of lads who are going to want to work? Because my sort of culture that I'm trying to create is a hard working environment, but an enjoyable one. So I like the players to be honest with me. I'm always honest with them. I've tried to be honest with each and every one of them since I've been there. Unfortunately, some of them, because I have been honest, have felt that it's not the club for them, but they can't ever accuse me of being dishonest in the future. So I like them to work hard. I like them to enjoy. I like people to turn up with a smile on their face. I like them to see, that they want to be there. And I think the numbers in training throughout the season has probably told us all we need to know, because we've had great numbers. Most sessions, the most that can't make it is probably one person, or two maximum on the odd occasion due to work commitments or whatever. I also like players to be able to feel comfortable and open up and ask me questions, and ask Ian Miller questions who's sitting in change rooms with them, and just be open. But I think it's important to try to teach them that whilst they're playing in a structured environment, in a disciplined environment, that I like them to express themselves, and they've got to learn from their mistakes. We've got a fairly young side, and they're learning all the time. And after every game, I kind of repeat myself when I say to them that you should learn at least one thing from every game that you play for the rest of your life. But I think if they give me those things first, the honesty, I think that's a major thing. I don't buy into when you hear probably the old school managers say, when I walk through the door, I want respect. I don't buy that. I think the manager has to respect the players before the players can respect the manager. So I've tried to respect them first. I've tried to get to know a little bit about them, their backgrounds, what makes them tick, what they do for a living, that type of thing, because I think you need to try and have a balanced view on them as individuals as well. And he was described a number of weeks ago by one of our players. He was asked about the environment or coaching environment that we try and encourage, and he basically said he felt that I was firm but fair. So which is probably, I think, probably about right. But yeah, that's kind of what I expect from them. If I'm going to work hard, and I do it for free, and my staff do it all for free, if we're going to turn up every Tuesday and Thursday training and Saturday, we're going to work hard, the least that we expect is people to work hard, and then we'll go places doing that.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting you just said about the you've got to respect them before you can get that respect from them, and it's really interesting that you said that. And again, it's just them putting their trust in you, and hopefully that is going to enable them to be honest. And like I say, all you want is an honest, hard-working performance. At the same time, you want them to speak up and have that bit of confidence, perhaps, just to say that wasn't quite right for me, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Again, because that's how you as a coach can deal with their problem, and them as a player know that you are able to work together to solve problems.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. You've said it that way. I completely agree. I think honesty is massive coming through as a young player. And again, what something you touched on was almost just not being scared to actually ask a question.
Mm.
And I had a chat with someone else about this week, and for me as a coach, I absolutely love it when a player asks a question. And I don't mean to do it as a coach, but it's just the way I do it. I always go in with whether it's a coaching session, an intervention, it just keeps coming out as a question. Because if they know the answer, then great, But I'm doing that. Sometimes they ain't answering, and I'm almost saying, if I ask a question, this is the environment I want to create. Is that you are open to ask questions. And massive. Like I said, the amount of things you can learn from, like you said, you've always got Ian Miller in the changing room. Ask him a question. Absolutely mental. If you will come away from that changing room completely regretting the fact that you never asked someone a basic question that he might play the same position as you, and you're not sure what to do in the scenario,
Yeah.
ask it. And if
Yeah.
you don't agree with him, you don't agree with him. But
Yeah.
you've asked someone who's done it, and
Well,
really important.
I've had most players over the last few months message me or ask me directly after game or before game or at training. They've all asked me, how can I improve? What can I do to improve? And that kind of tells me that they trust me and they feel comfortable to ask that question, which I think is so important, because I've also played for people that I've sat there and I thought, I'm not going to say anything to them because they'll see it as a sign of weakness. They'll think that I don't trust myself as a player. They won't help me. And what they'll do is they'll shift me out and they'll just bring the other lad in. And it should never, ever be like that. It should never, ever be like that at all. You got to create an environment where people are comfortable. People want to be there, as we mentioned earlier on, and they want to improve all the time. But that'll only happen if the respect thing comes in place, the honesty comes in place. And I just think it is so important. You also got some lads who have always been quite shy and haven't been used to that environment. So you have to keep trying to repeat it about, don't worry about asking me questions. And and I think we had one lad in particular who during the first lockdown he struggled. He's an asthmatic. He really, really struggled. And we played one game after we came back, and I felt for him. He was just struggling on the pitch. Wasn't at the levels that he was during pre-season. So at half time, I just sort of had a chat with him as we're going in. Says, everything okay? So I just can't get the breath. I'm just really, really struggling. I said, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. 10, 15 minutes into the second half, I could see he was struggling to a point where it was becoming self-demoralising for him. So I just sort of took him off, and as he came off, he apologised, and I sat him down and said, you've got no need to apologise to me whatsoever. You'll be fine. And then I made it a kind of mission of mine that I had to get that boy right, because he was such an important cog in our team. So I kind of took the pressure off him and said, look, I know what's happening. I'm not going to put you in the firing line. You tell me when you're ready and you'll be back in. Or if you want to come along and still be part of the squad, that's also fine. But you tell me when you're really, really ready. I'm not going to force you to do anything. And you could then tell that he wanted to stay involved in the squad. He came on as a sub a couple of times. You could then see he was starting to slowly get his confidence back. And then he looked his old self again. He was smiling. He was sort of joining in with the chat in the change rooms. And so much so that he actually ended the season. The season, what we've just part of the season just ended. He was probably our best player for the last month. He was probably our best player. Now, managers in the past, the old school, would have said, weak, soft, all these expressions that they give, the snowflakes, whatever. Well, if that's how you want to treat it, every player, you might be missing a gem just because your attitude is that everybody's a snowflake who can't get through that. So, the gems are there. You've just got to give them the opportunity. And so it's just important. I think it's so important that you have to care. You do. You really have to care.
Yeah, it's really important. Again, you've highlighted a scenario there where someone's clearly having a bad time, and how important it is to, obviously, he's in a lucky position that he's got that support network around him in his club, and that approach from you. And again, it just highlights that point of how important a club is. But again, just managing the situation as he's got to manage it, and as you've given him that that ownership to let you know when he's ready. But the way you've obviously then managed that as well is really important. That, like I say, we all find situations, whether it's in life or in football, you've got to manage and really, like I say, take your time and take some ownership. But at the same time, use that support network around you. Just shows you how, like I say, it works in football as well.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely.
I got last question, and just because obviously we're all in lockdown, etc. And to be fair, most of us have had an opportunity to reflect on obviously career or whatever it might be. How important is the reflection process, do you think, as a player? Obviously, even during non-lock times.
Um, I think that's a very, very good question, actually, Tom. I think the initial 2 lockdowns, if you like, we had the first one when everybody thought it was going to be over in 3 or 4 weeks. We have to laugh at that now. And then we had the second one sort of number of weeks before Christmas. And I think that a lot of people use that period as an opportunity to sit down during the quiet times and think, okay, how can I improve? What can I do? Is this for me? I do think this particular lockdown, I think, has become very, very difficult for almost everybody, if not everybody. And actually, I think a lot of people have kind of shut off from it, which is sad to say, really. I just think that a lot of people have, from what my experience is, the first 2 lockdowns, on our group chat, it was active. We were keeping each other going. We've tried to do that over the last sort of couple of. It's been tough. The group chat's been quiet. People have been quiet. I think they're really struggling with it. I think it's hard. I think they're all kind of just thinking, I just want it over. I just want it done. Because I think a period of lockdown to reflect on you as either a manager, coach, or a player, I think it's been too long now. I think we've all reflected. I think we've all looked at what can we do better, but now it's gone on so long. It's how much can you reflect? How deep can you go?
Yeah, you need some time to actually put it into action.
Yeah, you're right. And I sent out. I just sent out. It wasn't a fitness thing. It was just something for the boys to do, like last weekend, just to try and give them something to focus on. But I know they'll be doing bits and pieces anyway. But I've been doing a few bits and pieces on different things that I think we can improve on when we come back. But the trouble is, we just do not know when that will be, and that's the problem.
Yeah. No. And like I say again, having spoken to a lot of people, group chats for teams are really quiet. And as you said, everyone is finding this time very difficult. I appreciate that we may never experience something like this again. Who knows? But again, it just highlights just that need for that teamwork a little bit, coming together and just being there for each other.
Yeah.
Even off the pitch, because while this is something that no one's really experienced before, we all still have moments where we go through various experiences in life that we need those around us. And it just, again, highlights that need for each other, and just a little message in a group chat just to spark a bit of a laugh, spark a debate, whatever. It makes such a big difference to the team, especially if you've got people in your team that can do that.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's, as I say, it's just a really sort of tough period for everybody at the moment, and I think obviously it doesn't help that we're going through that period when it's the worst month of the year anyway, because it's a tough month anyway. I think.
I don't think many people are doing dry January, are they?
I don't think so. That went straight out of the window, didn't it? On the first. I think that hopefully when we get the lighter evenings in a number of weeks, that should just kind of help really to try and lift people. But we've just got to. We're all in it together. I hope it's a bit of a. It's a bit of a phrase that everyone's been saying. We are all in it together. We've got to try and help one another however we can, because it'll come around quickly. We know that. But I suppose it doesn't help as well. Whilst football on telly has been a bit of a saviour, it's also been a bit of a dampener with it's been a struggle watching some games. It's been really, really tough, but especially when you're an Ipswich supporter. Say no more.
Some players are still in lockdown.
Yeah, they've been about 6 months.
I really appreciate you coming on, Trev, and there's so much there just for people to take away. And yeah, really, really pleased with some of that stuff. It was
You're
a great
welcome.
chat.
You're welcome. Really, really enjoyed it. And great to catch up with you, and take care. And anyone who's watching, look after yourselves, and see you on the other side.